Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're going to talk about prisons. Specifically the challenge and huge opportunity surrounding the Ministry of Justice's ongoing £4 billion investment in the UK prison estate. I say opportunity because MOJ's ambition goes beyond simply adding 20,000 new prison places to the estate and intends to use this investment to deliver far wider social outcomes by creating decent modern environments that actually help rehabilitate prisoners and reduce reoffending. Now that's a big challenge, but in line with the government's Transforming Infrastructure Performance programme, the MOJ has set out to change the way it delivers construction investment, placing modern methods of construction and platform design, sustainability and digital technology at the heart of this strategy over the next 3 years or more. And that means deep and early engagement with the entire supply chain and a fundamental shift away from traditional confrontational contracting towards a more collaborative environment, and should focus every mind on how this investment will help to actually create that better prison service and maybe even a better construction industry. So it all sounds like the infrastructure nirvana. It's my pleasure, therefore, to welcome Sue McElroy, Commercial Director for the New Prison Capacity Programme at MOJ, where she's actually seconded in from the Cabinet Office and leads the team delivering this transformation. So, Sue, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, let's start by finding out a bit more about the New Prisons Capacity Programme. In October 2021, the Autumn Statement SR21 Spending Review confirmed £3.8 billion worth of investment across England and Wales over 3 years to deliver 20,000 additional prison places by the mid-2020s. So you've been leading this team since 2020, Sue. How do you describe that programme?
Well, that title certainly disguises it and makes it sound very simple rather than the complex scale and huge programme that we're operating across the full estate. So we're transforming the prison estate. We are, thinking about how we do that. So it's not just about what we deliver, it's how we deliver, thinking about construction, thinking about who we engage in that process, the supply chain, and making sure that we do all of those things safely. But primarily, it's about what we deliver to the taxpayer. It's about keeping the public safe, and it's about improving that over the short, medium and long term. Okay,
so you're investing something like £4 billion in the prison estate. Well, let's get specific. What does £4 billion buy you in the prison sector nowadays?
So I think, our estate is a huge amount of it is from the Victorian times, and everyone forgets that, how the world operated at that time and how people lived. A huge amount of it is improving all of the different aspects of the estate. We're doing new prisons, we're doing expansions, we're doing refurbishments. They're across all of our different security categories of prisons across our different regions. But effectively, that is the creation of 20,000 new places and all of the services that needs to support it. So kitchens and cultivating that environment for rehabilitation. So the training facilities that comes with those places.
Okay. I explained in my intro, the programme is more than just constructing new and refurbished prisons. It's about ensuring the right conditions are in place to rehabilitate prisoners. You describe it as by delivering new modern places, yes, sustainable accommodation. How do you explain this added outcome dimension to the programme, this ability to actually rehabilitate prisoners and actually transform their lives rather than just the estate, the bricks and mortar that they're living in?
So it's really fascinating, and there's a lot of studies and research in this area. But certainly there is a huge number of factors around what creates and what reduces reoffending, and that's part of that is the environment that you live in. Part of it is the atmosphere, the noise, the spaces, the human interaction that creates, as well as the support networks and services that you put around it. So it is in the fabric of the building and the fabric that we build, as well as the extra dimensions around how we support that. And that is also in kind of the opportunities and skills that we create. And that's where there's this really natural alignment that I think we're going to hopefully talk about today as well, around how does our prison population actually support construction?
Right, yeah. I mean, that's a key part of it. It's embedding, I suppose, the construction program into those wider societal outcomes.
Absolutely. And that's really, when you think about these programs and you think about what you're trying to achieve, looking for all of those different alignments that really you can add value at just a different level. And so when you think about, we've got a prison population, we want to create skills in that prison population, we want to reduce reoffending, and a lot of that is around jobs and skills, of which, the construction sector is clearly, has a growing skills gap. And that's something that we can really start to marry those resources and think about, well, how do we give the skills to a prison population that actually is going to help industry? And that's one of the greater benefits and greater values which we think we can deliver through this programme.
So yes, it's about rehabilitation. I mean, yes, it's about local employment. It's about creating better, more attractive places to work. And it's about reducing the environmental impact of the development. And part of that process also, as you say, is that rehabilitation for the prisoners. I mean, how do you actually measure that return on investment? Because presumably that's a priority, £4 billion of public cash. Well, it's got to have a good social return on investment.
Absolutely. And, there is no perfect formula. We're all trying to work out all these calculations at the moment in terms of sustainability. Do you buy that glass container or the plastic one, which is the better life cycle? And I think, measurements are getting better at all of those kind of life cycle benefits and social benefits. And, it's something clearly we're exploring through the value toolkit and the wider work that government's doing on that. But clearly we're looking at the primarily this is the outcome of those leaving prisoners. Do they return back into the system? And that's something which we're looking at in terms of some of our studies. Now we've finished some of our first generation designs. We're also looking at the performance of our buildings and how can we make those buildings more efficient, and also the operating cost of those buildings for the future and the burden that puts on the public purse.
I mean, 2 years into the programme, it's perhaps a bit early to have that research available to demonstrate that return. But, can you see positive outcomes? I mean, not just around the way that you're constructing, but actually the impact that it's having on the prison population.
So I think the feedback that we get from prisoners which have moved into some of these new facilities has been really positive. We've seen prisoners moving through in terms of supporting work on site as part of release on temporary licence, and then going into permanent jobs with our contractors, moving through and supporting those. So we're certainly hearing the stories, and we're beginning to get that evidence, on a larger scale.
But it's not just about the prison population, I suppose, the prisoners. It's also about the staff that work there, the families and friends that visit.
Absolutely. There's so many elements to this. They are clearly they are a prison, but they're a workplace, they're a school, they're a hospital, they're a healthcare facility. They provide, all of those elements of support when someone is in somewhere full time. So, quite rightly, you point out that it needs to be an environment which is safe for all of those people, but also that it works to the best of their abilities, whether it's a workplace or a residential place.
Certainly, it's a fascinating area, and I think something which, actually aligning the construction sector to those outcomes really, really definitively, I think is a really, really powerful thing to do. Sue, you've been seconded to the MOJ from Cabinet Office for over 5.5 years, but before that you were in private sector working as an engineer with Turner & Townsend and Bechtel before that on projects such as Crossrail, Heathrow, Riyadh Metro. I mean, what drew you towards the public sector? How is it different from life in the private sector? Is it all about that social value that you're trying to make a difference?
Really interesting question, and you're making me think. I think when I joined my before in private sector, I'd really been focusing on delivery, absolutely getting those things to happen when they were exactly supposed to happen. And some of that you look and you think and you're frustrated at the system. Kind of, why can't we do all of these other things? Or how could we how have we ended up with this answer? And so I really wanted to sort of get further upstream, be able to influence that sort of strategy, how we work together between private and public, and really think about how we can shape things and get the most out of every opportunity. I love the delivery. I love seeing what we deliver on site, and I love working with the contractors, but I also really enjoy shaping that strategy up front with the wider, cross-government relationships that are involved in front-end decision-making in government and business cases. And justice is just such a, fascinating a place to be. The purpose that drives the organisation, is second to none. And the size of our estate and what we deliver.
But Sue, working on prisons, let's face it, it's not for everyone. It is, as you say, it's fascinating and it's really, really important, but it's also incredibly difficult, I imagine, and also, very, very challenging environment that you find yourself in. What excites you about the programme that you're working on now, then?
We are doing so much, and you really see the benefit to the individual. And I think from coming from the outside, it's a slightly mysterious place, prisons.
Right, yeah.
And you give that insight into the contractors of what they're actually contributing towards, being able to bridge that gap between justice and projects. Is just fascinating, because when you get that understanding and you see that purpose land with others and what they're contributing to, it's just really, really rewarding.
Clearly, you're really quite community-minded, because I noticed that you're also a trustee of the St Albans Good Neighbour Scheme, which, to be honest, I know very little about, but I assume that it's a community help project in your local area. Tell me, what is it and how do you get involved?
So it's a St Albans Good Neighbours is a local charity. It provides lifts, medical appointments, social appointments to practical help, befriending and shopping. I got involved. It's been operating for over 40 years. I got involved because it was something that my dad was involved in. And I think it's just a really good way to be involved in your local community, support your local community, and also just understand a bit more about people. I learned so much from those that we support and have the most fascinating conversations. We do about 1,500 jobs a year. So, huge amount locally.
Yeah.
And, volunteering, it's that sector and charities are just so important. I think it was a Community Life survey recently said that 2 billion hours are spent volunteering. That's the same size as our employment industry in manufacturing and construction and real estate. And I think that just shows you the power, of volunteering and charities and what they do for society.
Well, this social value theme is clearly very, very close to your heart. And I think, you explained why it's so important. But you're also a qualified civil engineer, in turn qualified project manager. What makes a good project manager for you?
I think it's someone that sits there and understands the interfaces, understands the different roles, understands what you need to make it work and who you need to talk to. Because in the end, we've got so many different experts and they need to come together. And that translation and that communication is the fundamental. When that works, magic happens, things go well. When those things aren't there, it doesn't. I think that's the key role of a project manager, is keeping all of those things together, but also, of course, making sure that there is a plan, safety, quality, program, cost, that they continue to be part of the actively upfront in everyone's minds.
And of course that whole world of project management it has been changing a bit. No longer are project managers this hero leader that derived from the front. It's very much more bringing teams with you, and also very much more around how to drive the wider social outcomes from the whole of that investment. I mean, do you think that that's what makes you good at that job?
It's certainly why I enjoy it. Being able to see that full picture, being able to bring those together and being able to create the environment where, the person that sits and on site as the security can see actually what they're contributing to in terms of the delivery.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that you were also Women of the Future Award finalist in 2017. I mean, 7 years on, is it getting any easier to be a woman in infrastructure in 2024?
I think, I'm really lucky. There's been great role models that have come before me, and that continues to make it, a great place to work. There are more and more, women in construction. I think there's a greater understanding of the different roles in the sector and what that can be. And there's lots of, ongoing campaigns which are improving communication on all of those things. Neil Perry's got a great one at the moment, the She Build UK, which is looking at inspiring females of all ages into construction. There's a lot of people thinking about this, but also it's broader than that. How do we make construction a place that everybody wants to work in, and how do they see how they fit into that picture? That's
about that diversity of thought, diversity of action.
Absolutely. The more people that you have in a room, the more the more all we do in terms of construction is kind of risk management. And the better that you have, the better expertise, the better voices, the more lessons, the more you can hear, the more you can bring that together, the more successful something is and the greater good you can get out of it.
So we've talked about the St Albans Good Neighbours scheme. What else do you get up when you're not building prisons then? What floats your boat outside of infrastructure?
I love travelling, exploring places, exploring the countryside. We've got 2 rather energetic dogs that my husband and I have to keep on side. He'd probably say I also spend a lot of time organising him and the house and his mess, but hopefully he doesn't listen to this.
Dog breed? I mean, what are they? Are they small? Are they large?
We've got a Hungarian Vizsla.
Oh, right.
Gun dog. And we've got a Whippet, and I think they look at each other and think they're the other one. So we've got a very bold, enthusiastic and brave Whippet, and a rather timid gun dog.
Well, you need some wide open spaces to get the exercise in for that lot, I must say. Yes, goodness me.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about transforming infrastructure performance, because I met you at the summit in November, which was hosted by the Institution of Civil Engineers, when we really talked about making TIP, as it's known, business as usual across the industry. I mean, why is that programme so fundamental to the future of the industry in your view?
I think change has been talked about in this industry just so many times, and the sector just remains so highly fragmented, and it just gets more and more fragmented, as everyone gets more and more specialised. And yet there is just such a huge opportunity if you bring those things together. And there is so many opportunities with innovation, digital, all of the technologies which are growing now, and AI and others. If we can adopt them in the right way, the productivity gains, the benefit for all, and profits in the industry. The margins in this industry are incredibly tight. And I think, we all know that this world has been very uncertain, and the interdependence between private and public sector just couldn't be more visible in the last few years with COVID, with the Suez Canal, with the supply chain disruption, with cyber security, and with all of the global sort of uncertainty and conflict. And that just continues to show that, we need to work together. We need to bring those themes together. If we do, the size of the opportunity. And therefore, I just think there's so much more potential for those things.
Well, it was interesting to hear Kat Little, the Speaker from Treasury, talking about how important it was for government to set a strategy and then to stick to it. And I presume that you'd agree with that strategy. Is that the key to success of the prisons program? You've got this commitment of a large amount of money. You've got a commitment to deliver a really kind of clearly defined set of outcomes. Why is it so difficult for the majority of government programs to actually achieve that commitment?
It is, it's difficult. And I suppose we do recognise as a customer that we have such an important role in the MOJ to set that direction. We have worked really hard to bring together those in the prison service who, the ultimate customer of the projects, with industry, with ourselves, commercial, project delivery, legal, all of those that are involved to really agree and set that direction. And the investment has made that. It's made it clearer to decide our projects, to split our work streams, to package work, to procure in a combined and a coordinated way, and to be clearer on our pipeline with the market, which has allowed us then to think about kind of what are the right delivery models, alliancing, but also really engaged with the supply chain through the different tiers, through our regular market days, but also to really start to have more detailed conversations over, where does the money go? Where do we create efficiencies?
Yeah.
And how can we really drive value? But also where are the frustrations down the supply chain? If we did something differently, or we can unlock some of that.
Yeah, or if you change your mind, then that undermines what the supply chain is trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, when it comes to the Transforming Infrastructure Performance Programme, there's a lot to it and there's some really powerful stuff. But the reality is when you turn up to a lot of those events, there's in many cases the usual suspects in the room. It's not very well understood across the whole industry supply chain. I mean, do you think that's possible to change?
Yes. I think, some of this is about making it real and bringing it to life. And, the prisons is a really good example of what we're doing, which shows the sort of tangible and real links between what we're able to deliver and those themes, the people, the places, and what that, and the regeneration, the social element of what we're delivering. The natural repetition in prisons allows you to really get to grips with platforms and think about actually how can you apply these, and also the multiplier effect given that repetition. So I think it's really about real stories showing that this delivers more. Well,
certainly at the summit, I mean, you talked a lot about the way the new prison capacity programme, alongside its drive for greater social value and it really focused on that rehabilitation aspect, was really pioneering the use of modern methods of construction and as you say, a platform approach to design, to use the ability to repeat rather than having to redesign and bespoke everything. Why is that so important in this program? And I suppose why is that so important that this program demonstrates that and makes it go wider?
Yeah. So modern methods of construction mean awful lot of things to different people, and we just trying to understand what that is from our perspective. We've got a lot of natural repetition, and it's about harnessing that natural repetition and working out how we can make that into a more, car factory type operation. And that's really what we're trying to do. So whether that is docks, locks, doors, windows, whether it's pods, which bring some of those things together, whether it's kind of walls, whether it's, it's really about thinking about what is it that we can construct, that we can really, push off a production line. And that's, that's for us, it's giving better value, it's giving better quality, it's safer, more controlled fabrication off-site, but it's also bringing different workforces in, where there's a stable local job in a factory. So it's really interesting to see the other things that are coming from it. And so very much we're that's some of the areas that we've been highlighting.
Well, you're absolutely right. Modern method of construction, it means so many different things to different people. But you talk about it in terms of three areas: off-site, platforms, and digital. We could delve into exactly what those mean. But I suppose the reality is that the current construction sector, it isn't really set up to embrace this kind of new way of doing it, mainly because there aren't that many programs like yours which have got enough of a kind of a pipeline of activity to enable that to happen. Would you agree that that's one of the key things which is missing?
Yeah, I think some of it is imagination and thinking about where does that repetition come from? How closely can we work with schools, with hospitals? What are the things that are the same? What are the things that are different? Where is there natural alignment that we can also, with industry start to work through? So there's some of the areas that we're certainly looking at. And again, that comes back to, what are our designers? How are designers designing things? Where are they? How are they supporting? That type of thinking. And obviously, they've also got a big role in that up front, thinking about those elements.
And you're seeing value. You're seeing the ability to get more for your £3.8 billion.
We are. Absolutely. And, the designs that we're producing on one go into another. Where we're doing new builds, we're using elements of those design in refurbishments and expansions. We're keeping our designs coordinated, moving them forward as a client designer together. And therefore, again, that's enabling us to unlock those efficiencies from standardisation. And that's a really important role as a customer, but is absolutely unlocked by that pipeline, which unlocks the investment, the innovation, and all of the other elements.
But of course, Sue, building the stuff is one thing, but actually embedding and embracing digital technology and building into the maintenance, the operational strategies, that is really the key to reducing cost in the long term, but also really, really, really important, reducing the amount of carbon emissions over that long-term life of the asset. I mean, how's the programme doing in terms of driving down those longer-term vital issues around carbon and operational cost?
Yeah, so our new prison, most recent prison, is about halfway through construction at the moment, HMP Millsyke in East Yorkshire. So that's 100% electric, that will be. And that will cut carbon emissions by over 85% of those that have just been delivered. So, this makes huge impact. And that's but it also reduces the energy demands of that building by half. So this is thinking about heat pumps, solar panels, recycled material, electrical charging points, habitats, just kind of also how we program our lighting systems, all of those types of elements to make sure that not only are you trying to cut carbon in the build, but you're really thinking about the right decisions for the whole life cycle. And that's challenging, with CapEx and OpEx, CapEx and RDL decisions. But it can be done. Changes
heading for the industry for sure. When you summarised the programme at the end of the November conference, you said, as the client, we have a fundamental role from the outset of being really clear how value is defined. What is the outcome we're trying to achieve, and does everyone on the programme really understand it? I mean, how do you define that value for MOJ?
So I think it has to come back to the MOJ values and our role as the Ministry of Justice in society, and in some ways making sure that is understood. That is why we are here, and that is why our supply chain is here to help us support us in those ambitions. And by making sure that is understood, the opportunities and the ideas come through. So then it's creating the spaces and the interactions that actually allow those ideas to surface. And the discussions and debates to be had. So we spend a huge amount of time. We have a quarterly supplier day. We run regular supplier relationship sessions. We have working groups and special interest groups. And we try and make sure that we're really targeting those around key areas. And so it's really, I think it's about being really clear on the purpose and making sure that that's known through the supply chain, and making sure then the feedback and the forums exist to capture it.
I'll be building on that. It's a really difficult area because, you have to ensure that everybody in the entire construction supply chain gets on board and truly understands where those values lie. But as you said earlier, they're all up against it in terms of low margins, incredibly low barriers to entry, and so they're going to be focused, naturally on actually how to keep their own businesses alive. How do you make that? How do you square that kind of that circle, so to speak, to make sure they are all on board with those wider MOJ goals of yes, getting great value for public money, yes, protecting the public, but also helping to rehabilitate the prison population?
So we've been really clear that we are looking for suppliers that will do this. We've been clear through our tenders, our early market engagement, and then we've evaluated deciding our supply chain on those elements. They've flowed through into our tenders and through into our KPIs in our contracts. So we've been really clear, and we've used that measurement of who we're prepared to work with. And our suppliers have really taken this on board, and they've grown it, and they've grown and identified opportunities that we never would. We've got precast factories now within some of our prisons that are actually making precast units for other prisons. We've got LED lights being built in one prison for another. We've got now starting off with engineering studios. I mean, there is huge amount. That's
actually jobs that you're creating inside those prisons,
and that has been driven by our supply chain. Because they've bought into this purpose and they really believe in the value that they can add. And also they can see, how these things can come together and make business sense.
Right. So I do think that, it's a fascinating area just simply because of its ability. It's such a large program and such a fundamentally important program. It's got this huge ability to start to transform the sector. So thanks so much for sharing your insight today. I do think we're going to be hearing a lot more about this program. So thanks very much for sharing it today.
Thank you so much for inviting me today. You will hear more about this programme, and hopefully this has given you a bit of insight to go and find out more. Brilliant.
Well, I'll put some links certainly in the show notes for the podcast today to make sure that that you do have access to the to more information. But that's all we've got time for today. Sue, thanks very much for sharing it.
Thank you.
We have got more coming from the Infrastructure Podcast, more in the pipeline, more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website. That's www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find more background information and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks again to Sue, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.